Epigenetics Update 2012 Chapter 1.
He taps the left leg, the left quadricep contracts, which means that the right quadricep has to become inhibited or go weak, and he didn't do that, he stayed strong. So this means that the cross reflex, extensor reflex, isn't working, which is inevitably is a spinal problem. Okay? So in other words, he's got some form of spinal lesion. So always start at the top, therapy localize the upper cervicals first, tuck your chin in so you actually get the therapy localization to the atlas. And then we'll tap the reflex, pull, and it restores it, goes weak. So in other words, his problem is right at the top of the neck. And the mechanoreceptors are arranged, as I would say, rostral to caudal, in other words, top to bottom. So there is a problem in the top of his neck, and that's more important than anywhere else. So if we were to therapy localize again the top of the neck, and let's see if he will weaken in the clear to that, which he doesn't on this side, but he does on that side. What technique are we going to employ? And to find the best technique, the best thing is to ask him what the best technique for me to do adjust your neck is. Okay, so to resolve his upper cervical lesion, the optimal technique for me to perform on you is a manipulation. So manipulation comes up for me simply because I'm an osteopath. Okay, if you're not an osteopath or a chiropractor, probably manipulation won't come up. So if we go through the sort of ideas, it could be a resist technique, it could be a respiratory adjust. I'm going to show you one using Miron light a bit later on. It could be meridian therapy, therapy localization technique, whatever it is will come up the best one for you to perform on the patient. Okay? But with him and me, surgery didn't come up. Okay? And because I'm not a surgeon. So obviously he doesn't need an operation at this stage. Okay, so I'm going to just test his muscle here, push across here, we do a pectoralis major clavicular, and I'm going to challenge the upper cervical against the occiput, and his atlas on the left needs adjusting, and his occiput on the right. Good, well done. So let's bend you up there. So if you're not manipulator, it won't show. So there's no need to therapy localize it, we'll just tap the reflexes. So his muscle goes weak now, as it should do, and we'll just tap the other one to make sure. Now, the next question is, what happens if there's any more mechanical problems? And I'm going to show you a little technique that you can do to see if there's any more mechanical problems after the first one, you know, as we move along. Okay, so next one is, I'm going to ask him a strange but very important question, is how tall are you? In feet and inches, ideally. 5 foot? 10. 5 foot 10. Okay. So that's fairly on the tall side, isn't it, 5 foot 10? So what we're going to do is we're going to test his colours for his constitutional type, and we'll test first of all, pull for the red. You're back on the air. Oh, good. So we're live now, are we? Okay, we're testing for green. And we're testing for blue. And he weakens to blue, so the next thing is we do blue on one eye. And he's not blue on the right. But he is blue on the left. So he's what we could call a hybrid. So he's a blue dominant, but the right eye is red. So what we would have done at this stage is to continue to analyze him, examine him, treat him, using the blue on the left and the red on the right. So this would be his combination of the things that were wrong with him or out of balance. Now, what we've discovered is this is not really what he really is, because he should be one of those three body constitutional types. And as we're going to find during the weekend, the reason that we can change our body type from a red to a blue or vice versa or any combination is due to the subconscious emotions. So he will change his hormonal build from his way of thinking. So this is a very good example of the way we perceive the world through our emotions, particularly our subconscious emotions, changes the hormones which change our build. So he actually manifests as a red or a blue because of his thinking. And what we want to know is which one is he? And that's why I asked how tall he is, because I'll give you the figures as we go through of the height of people and what build they should be. So people are smaller, medium or tall, okay? Not average. Average, there is no average in height, okay? There's the smaller height build in height, there's the medium, and then there's the tall. And for a man, probably 5'9" onwards is tall. And he says he's 5'10". And I would expect him probably to be a green giant. Okay, so greens tend to be the tall people, as we'll see. Now, greens are run by their adrenal glands. And the adrenal glands, particularly the adrenal cortex, give us a big, as we'll see a bit later on, a big square hand. So I've got a big hand, ideal for the type of work that I do. Andrew does not have a big hand. Okay, can you see his hand there? Okay, you'll see that his hand isn't like mine. Okay, it's a different build altogether, isn't it? Okay, so that makes me suspect in some ways that he's not a green. Okay, it doesn't tell me whether he could be a red or even a blue, but what we're going to do is we're going to determine which one he is and change him. Now, we're going to pop his fingers on his right greater wing of the sphenoid, followed by the fingers on the left greater wing of the sphenoid. Okay, so we're doing this to this, as we're all doing them out. Pull, and those are the points we use for the amygdala, which is the main rheostat of the subconscious emotions. Then we therapy localize the left to the right. Pull, and we see he goes weak when he therapy localizes left to right. This means his left brain is in conflict with his right. We don't know what it is, but his right is not in conflict with his left. It's when he therapy localizes the left side, it's in conflict to the right. So we'll be looking at this left-right problem a lot during the weekend, because this is how we perceive the world, is by our five senses and going into our brains and storing all that information. So he has an emotional problem. Okay, we don't know what the problem is. We don't really want to know what it is at the moment. What we want to know is how to fix it. Okay, and we've got a very novel way of doing this. So I need a light box. Clive, have you got a light box? Handy. I need a plug, so I'm going to have to stretch this one, Gary. Now, we discovered this years ago, that you could help emotional problems through light therapy. And the light therapy that we employ were coloured acetates on a light box. You remember the light box, which most of you have got, and the set of 14 acetates associated with the meridians. And since we've been working with mirror-on glass over the last year, we found that the light emitted through the mirror-on glass is known as the violet flame, which we'll talk about, is a healing colour which has been used for centuries to heal people. So what I wanted to do was to experiment with the mirror-on glass light, which you can probably see. You put it up on camera. Can you get that? Does it come up on the screen? Oh, perfect. So you can see the colour is quite unique. Okay, it's a very interesting colour, because as we'll talk about it a bit later, you do not see this colour in nature. It's a very powerful healing colour. Now, you can zap that in straight into his eyes as a possibility, but then I'd need two of these to put them into the eyes. But we have another secret place that we can actually do this, where we can put energy in, which is how energy goes into the infant in Chinese medicine through the umbilicus. And the umbilicus is known as the shrine of God in Chinese medicine, because that's where qi, or the life energy, goes in. And in traditional Chinese medicine, it continues to go in all your life. So it makes sense, and I know some homeopaths administer homeopathic remedies that way. But just doing that won't make any difference to him whatsoever, because he doesn't know what to do with the light. Okay? But if you put your left hand on your left greater wing of the sphenoid and on your right, okay, we know he goes into weakness. Okay? So his brain is recognizing there's a problem between the left and the right side. Now what we're going to do is put the mirror-on glass light onto his umbilicus. And these light boxes, as you'll see, pinpoint the light straight into the umbilicus. And we give him exactly 1 minute. Okay. Now, if you've got a clock in your treatment room, it's easy. You need a second hand. Otherwise, it's a game that I play with the children and they play with me, is you do tell when 5 seconds is up first of all. It's great for car journeys. So you say when 5 seconds is up, and one of the times you're on the mobile phone, you say 5, and they say, no, Dad, you're wrong, it was 4, etc. Then you do 10, then you do 20 seconds. Eventually you do a minute. And of course, the longer you get, the further out you become. So sometimes you're in 40 seconds, sometimes you're fast, and sometimes you're way, way over. So we just need 1 minute. About 15 or so seconds still to go. And we'll discover that not only will he emotionally be more settled and more balanced in the subconscious, but something very interesting is about to occur. Okay, so it has an on and off switch there, so we just turn that one off. So let's recheck the muscle to see whether he's strong. No, stay on there, left to right, that's it, pull. So he's now nice and strong. Now take that away, and this is the big turning moment, is what happens to his colour. Pull. So he doesn't weaken to red. He doesn't weaken to green. He does weaken to blue, but remember he didn't weaken on the right eye, wasn't it? Pull. So now he does weaken on the right, and he does weaken on the left. So he's actually a blue-blue, and that is his body type, his constitution. Now, as we'll meet a bit later, blues are dominated, their main primary coordinating gland is the gonads, or the testes in the case of the man. And we'll have a look a little bit later when we look at these body types. We can pick them out by their height, sometimes by their width also, but the height, and also their hand size. And most giveaway with Andrew is the body hair. Okay, this is a gonad boy. This is a gonad man. Okay, so he's governed by his gonads. That's his primary organizing gland. And of course, in the male, that's going to be testosterone and dihydrotestosterone. So he is actually a blue, and therefore has all the characteristics of a blue. But somewhere along the line, he's developed a red tendency, wasn't it? Red in there. That means he's developing thyroid issues. Okay, he's becoming more like a red. And give him another year, 5 years, he might be pure red. He could actually change his body structure. But he still remains, his fundamental constitution genetically is a blue-blue. Okay, so that's how we would handle him. So we look at all the issues involved with the constitution of a blue, and immediately you flash through your mind, you think, lactose intolerant. First thing you need to think about, lactose. Okay. Second thing would be mercury. Okay, he's going to have a tendency to absorb mercury. So here's two big issues. Is he having cow's milk into his diet? Is he getting mercury in from some form? Okay, so these would be issues as far as toxicity is concerned. We know he'd probably be very sensitive to certain toiletry products, particularly those that are estrogen mimickers. He's probably very sensitive to tyramine, aged type of protein foods, which may lead him on to migraine headaches, etc., etc. There's a whole package which we'll look at. Okay. Now to find out, he's just said he used to get migraine headaches when he drank milk. So you know, but he doesn't like milk. He's telling us the story now, but he could have come in hidden, disguised as a green or a red, but he still tells you the same story. Have you had that yourself? I had a lady on Thursday who was a particular colour, and we'd examined her before for Lyme's disease. She said she got Lyme's disease, and I found no evidence whatsoever of Lyme's disease, but we found she was very deficient. And when I saw her, I did this technique and changed the colour. She was showing, I think, red. No, she was showing blue, that's right. And then she became red, and she was a red build, and all the characteristics. She said, yes, I'm sensitive to wheat, etc., etc. And directly I changed her to the red, she weakened to the Lyme's vial. Okay? So in other words, in the disguise that she was under, how she'd adapted through a period of time into a different constitution, she didn't show the very thing I was looking for. And we probably all come across that when a patient says, I'm sensitive to wheat, I blow up every time I eat wheat, and you say, no, you don't. You know, you're blue or green, you test them with wheat and they don't go weak. But they're telling you a little story there that possibly their constitution has changed, and when you change it back, then they lose all those other defects, but they gain the one of the colour that they're going to. When we did this a few months ago in Los Angeles, we changed the girl who was blue, I think Jill, into a red, wasn't it? And she said, does that mean I can drink now? So she said, because I can't tolerate alcohol at all, like, you know, most blues. So we said, with trepidation, well, probably yes. So the next day she gave him a big smile. She said, I got really drunk, she said, last night. She said, and I have no headache at all. She said, it's absolutely amazing. So she praised God that she was now a red. Okay. So bad luck for those who are red if you go change to blue. So that doesn't mean you can't drink alcohol. It just means your amount that he can drink is probably not brilliant. Okay. But I don't know how you manage.
I normally manage very well.
You manage very well, that's it. Well, you may not manage so well now.
Oh,
okay. Now, what we found then is that we can use the acetate and turn him to weakness and find out all the things that's wrong, in other words, what will strengthen. We can put the acetate over the eyes, and many years ago when we first did this, probably 12 or so years, maybe more now, we discovered a lot of people, of course, don't like the colour that weakens them neurologically, so they shut their eyes. So shut your eyes, and the incredible thing was he still weakens. So bang goes the theory that this affects the cones, and the cones then affect the neurological system. So it may be that it affects the cones, but there must also be receptors in the skin on the eyelid. So at that time, I then used to just put it on the forehead there, and with the eyes open or closed, doesn't matter, he'd weaken. Okay? And then we moved it thinking, well, say that wobbling off, let's put it around the umbilicus, either across the umbilicus or just above the umbilicus, and it works really well. So it doesn't matter where you put it, but this weekend we're going to go back to what I discovered, is to put it there. And we're going to go there for a very particular reason, and we'll go into what that is as we go along. So at the moment we're going to put it over the forehead, just over the eyebrows there, because there's two very, very important places in there called the orbital frontal cortex of the frontal cortex, which is where the consciousness or thinking part comes from, or emanates through. So pull. And at this stage now, what I would do to see what's wrong with him, I take him through the different eye positions. So I take him to the left for toxicity. So what we're going to do is follow my finger, keep his head still, and we'll take him 5 or 6 times in the direction. Habituation, this is called. Pull. No, you can come back, it's okay. Pull. Okay. So he stays weak, so probably chemicals, toxicity is not a problem. Follow my finger. So we go to the left and up for nutrition. Okay, pull. And then we'll go to the left and down for structure, which probably won't be any more structure because we dealt with that. Good. Then we'll go to the right, which is for exercise, which we rarely find anybody needs exercise except people who exercise. They're the ones who usually show up that they need exercise, and you think, well, that's strange. And that's usually because they're doing the wrong exercise. They're doing too much anaerobic and not enough aerobic. To the right and up, dehydration. Well, we didn't have that problem this summer, did we? Hardly anybody showed to dehydration this summer. Oh. To the right and down, we'll call it allergy or intolerance, something that the person is eating or drinking. So that will be, you know, if that showed positive with Andrew, we'd immediately go for the dairy. And then round and round. 3 times one way for infection. And then we'll go 3 times the other way, just to make absolutely sure. And then we'll do left-right, which is for energy, but everybody is a bit tired. Pull. And then finally up and down for hypoxia. Pull. Okay, so at the moment, nutrition's the only thing that shows up with you. So what I would do is go through, generally I would go through my composites, test them out for the amino acids, the vitamins, the coenzymes, etc., etc. Now, what we're going to look at is the things that blue people need. And we know that blue people have certain constitutional differences from a red and a green. And we're going to examine what those are, particularly in relationship to things like cytochrome P450 enzymes are less expressed in blue people for certain detoxification than greens, and greens are less than blues in other aspects, which is why greens are sensitive to certain chemicals and blues aren't. So we'll look at the individuality that occurs. But we know that all blues are sensitive to lactose. Okay? All blues are sensitive to mercury. All blues are sensitive to tyramine and so on. And what you find is that all blues will fit a profile of what their needs are. Okay? The difference in the human genome, as we'll discover, is 10%. That's all. So it's only 10% makes you and me different. Okay? And what is that 10% is I'm taller than you, I accept. Okay? So height makes a tremendous difference. And what makes a person taller is their hormones. Okay? Now, green people who are taller are governed by their adrenals. Smaller people are governed by their gonads, and middle people are governed by their thyroid. So it's the hormones which regulate our body height and our structure and our constitution. And we need to look after those, particularly the adrenals, because once you burnt your adrenals out, you're in dead trouble. Okay? Because it takes a lot to rebuild again. Okay? So we want to look after them. We want to find what the right nutrients are for a green person, for a red person, and for a blue person. And these really surprise me because they are the same things. Not in each person, but every blue person shows the same needs. And it's extraordinary when you use this because you find they all need certain vitamins and they all need certain oils and they need certain minerals. We know, you've learnt before, that red people are prone to heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and virtually everybody is positive to homocysteine. So it comes as no surprise that a red person ought to take B12, folate, B6, B2, and certain other nutrients involved with breaking down homocysteine. That's no big surprise to you. Okay? But it will be a surprise to learn whether you're green, blue or red, what all those other nutrients are. And it makes life an awful lot easier if you can put a package together and say, right, this person needs the following vitamins, this person needs the following oils, this person needs the following stuff. And it's the same with detoxification. What nutrients and what herbs and what spices will spice up those cytochrome P450s, which are low in your particular body type. So this is what sort of work we've been doing over the last couple of months. Okay, so we know that he's deficient, and we'll come back to Andrew and work out what those deficiencies are and work out a package for him. Okay, and then we could leave him, and he may not want to go any further. He might say, thank you very much, you know, that's all I'm interested in. On the other hand, we could take him to the next level and say, we might want to look at your emotions. Okay. So when we come to looking at the emotions, we've looked at acupuncture points before and their relationship to neurotransmitters. And what I'm going to do is something some of you may have come across before and some of you won't. And this is using the digital photography of taking a picture of the face and then splitting it down the middle and making two right-hand faces and two left-hand faces. And this program, which we've now got in English, which is good, is amazing because it shows you things that you don't see with the human eye. And that's what you really are, the difference between your left and your right. And this reflects exactly the difference between your left brain and your right brain. Okay? So you're actually going to look at yourself, and you may not like what you see. When I was first shown this, I said, I recognize that person, but who's that? And they said, well, that's you. I said, no, that one's me. So I'm going to use a series of colours, and we'll talk all about why they're these particular colours, and they correspond exactly to the right brain and the left brain. So these, as we'll see, are yin colours, and these correspond to the left brain. So we want to see where Andrew's coming from, because we don't know anything about Andrew, and most mysterious of all is Andrew doesn't know anything about where he's coming from either. Okay? Most of us don't know what we're really like underneath. So first of all, is he left brain or right brain? Pull. Well, he's not left brain. So there's two options. He's either right brain or no brain. Or he's perfectly balanced, which is probably unlikely. So he weakens to the colours associated with the right brain. Okay? So we know he's right-brained. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this acetate in half. You're going to all be given these, so you'll be able to do all this. And we're going to work out whether at the moment he's basically in control of his life or whether he's out of control. In other words, life is in control of him, or is he in control of his life? So we divide it between the upper half and the lower half. Pull. So the lower half doesn't weaken, so it looks as though he's in control of his life. So he's in these upper three. Now these correspond to the yang meridians, and this is going to correspond to the triple warmer, to the small intestine, and the stomach meridian. Okay. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to cut these out into strips. Now at this stage I can either therapy localize for the meridian, where he's coming from, or I can use the colours, which will speed the whole process up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop on there the colours associated. Sorry, it's difficult to see in this light. Triple warmer. Okay, so we're going for triple warmer first. Pull. So he doesn't weaken to the triple warmer, and then we'll go for I want to go for stomach, because that's the next one up. And then we'll go for small intestine. Okay, so I reckon he's coming from his small intestine. Okay, now this is a very high level. This is a very good level to come from. It's right up the top, as we'll see the chart. So what we'll do is we'll take that off, and now what we'll do is we'll get him to therapy localize his small intestine. Okay, we'll do one side. And this is why you'll never find where a person's coming from in the traditional way. So pull, so he's nice and strong. Now therapy localize the other side. Pull. So he doesn't show the small intestine. So we just said small intestine's not a problem with him. Now watch. Small intestine on the right. Let's compare the right brain to the left. Okay, so we do right to left. Pull. Take it away, and now do left to right. Pull. And there he is. Okay, so he's actually coming, his perception of the world, as we'll learn, is from his small intestine. So his small intestine is rather important. Not only is the small intestine to do with love and reverence, as we'll see in the world, but it's also to do with the small intestine. So we need to probably have a look at his guts a little bit in there. And we also know, neurologically, neurochemically, he's low in noradrenaline, which is the neurotransmitter associated with the small intestine. So all our nutrients, we'll find, will be associated with the synthesis of noradrenaline. So we've got to build his noradrenaline up from the inside, because he's burning his noradrenaline out by his thinking process. Okay? Because he should be coming from love and reverence, but he's not coming enough from that. He's not seeing enough love and reverence in the world. So we'll give him a little affirmation later on, something he can say quietly under his breath. But I'm going to treat him. Now I'm going to treat him in a very unusual way. And this you will never have seen before, as far as I know, anywhere in the world. Okay? You're the first people to have been taught this. Okay? So you're very, very lucky. So don't screw it up with the first patient. Okay? It's very easy. I'm surprised. And somebody might say, we've been doing that for years, you know. But I've never come across that before. And we'll see whether you have. And it's such an easy technique. And it's so simple that nobody's thought about it. Okay? So what makes Andrew come from that part of his mind, if you like, whatever that is, the small intestine, and how he projects and sees the world, can only be from what he's experienced. Can't it? You cannot imagine anything that you haven't experienced. Okay? It's impossible to have a fear or a worry unless you've seen it on television or you've heard it or been there. Okay? So everything that you've ever tasted, everything that you've ever smelled, seen, heard or touched is recorded in here. Okay? So under hypnosis it can come out. Thank heaven you can't remember everything, otherwise it'd be too mind-blowing with all those bytes of information. But it can be retrieved under hypnosis. So we know it's in there. Okay? So it got in there. Okay? Now how did it get in there? How did he see what he sees? How did he hear what he hears? Through his eyes and his ears. Easy really, isn't it? Okay? And what he's tasted, he's experienced. So we'll see that what you see and your thoughts that go on are all a combination of everything that he's ever seen, tasted, heard. But where are the problems? Because everything we taste and then isn't always nice, is it? Particularly as a child, some things are horrible. Okay? And we'll have great fun with this because you'll really find out about yourself. So what we're going to do is we're going to get him to touch his right eye, close your eyes, okay, and touch his left eye. Can you guys see behind that camera? Do you want, I was going to suggest perhaps you might want to move your tables over here. Are you okay on there? All right. But if you want to move the table, you might find it better. Okay, so he's touching his right eyeball and his left. Okay. Now I have an order, don't I, Jill, to doing this. And you might want to follow this order, or you can have what order you want. But inevitably what happens is patients talk during this, and then you forget which ones you've done, right to left. So if you always have a routine, doing left to right, right to left, then you know when you go back, you can pick it up again. So I do right to left of his eyes. Pull, take them off, and now go on the left eye to the right eye. Okay, so this challenges the left brain and the right brain in association with vision. Okay, now we'll put a finger, same finger in his right ear and in his left ear, not on it, in it. Okay, and then take them off and do the left to the right. Patients pick this up very quickly. Those who've got learning difficulties don't, but you may have to place the fingers in the ear, but most people get it pretty quickly. Okay. Now, luckily, God has given us 5 fingers, or 4 fingers and 1 thumb. So now we're going to use the next finger, okay, the middle finger. And we're going to put this, and this is the way you say it, and you'll learn, on your nostril. And that means up your nose. But if you say up your nose, they all giggle and laugh and feel embarrassed about it. But if you say on the nostril, that's okay. So we do the right nostril to the left nostril, take them away, and then the left nostril to the right. Now, we have a 4th finger. For obvious reasons, because he's going to stick his tongue out. Okay, don't forget to do this, to change fingers. Patients don't like going up their nose and then in their mouth with the same fingers. Okay, take them away. Okay, strong. Okay, now, last sensation is touch. So on the right side, you tickle, just tickle yourself. Okay, go on, tickle, that's it. Whoa. And on the left, just tickle. Okay, and remain touching. So this only leaves one combination left now. Tickle your left, tickle your right, and bang. Ah, that's interesting. So he's an osteopath, and he's got a problem with touch. And I couldn't understand it because mine was the same. And I thought, really? But touch is such an interesting concept, isn't it? Because it can be, touch can include fine sensations, coarse sensations, vibrations, hot and cold, pain, all sorts of things. But touch can be such a lovely feel. You know, when somebody rubs your back, you feel lovely. And you actually experience oxytocin surge. You know, this is the feeling of love when someone rubs your back. But somebody else could rub your back in the same way, and you could feel noradrenaline surge because it's someone you don't like. Okay? You've ever been touched by someone you don't like? Somebody embarrassing who's come up and given you a kiss, and you think, I don't want to kiss that person, you know. You know, it leaves a horrible feeling, doesn't it? But, yeah, as a child, yeah, and you build these things up. I don't like to be kissed or touched. And it's very, very interesting what we discover with ourselves, because we all have these problems. And when they are hardwired in, most of them from soon after birth, and maybe the birth process itself, because you think how much touch is involved with birth, coming out in that canal, and the first thing you have to do, etc., is to be touched and to be held in a nice way. Okay? And some babies aren't touched, aren't they? They're just left or put straight into a crib and, you know, just ignored, really. So touch is one of the first things. Although it's not the first to be hardwired, as we'll see, hearing actually is the first to be hardwired. By 16 weeks, the baby's listening to you, even that early. Okay? So how are we going to treat him? And the answer is, he stays touching left to right because his brain's tuned in now, and we give him 1 minute of the zapping with the mirror on glass through the umbilicus. Okay, now you can talk at this one. The only one they can't talk is when they're touching their tongue. And remember, most people can't talk and not move their hands. So if you tell it, and they move their hands off, you've had it. You've got to start again, all right? Because they mustn't lose the contact, because that's the reference to the brain in the first place, all right? Very, very important. So warn them to keep your hands tucked onto where you're therapy localizing. Okay, so you pass the minute. Usually a little bit of conversation helps there. And they say, yeah, this time I explain, there's good touches and there's nasty touches. Tell them the story about someone rubbing your spine, and they say, oh yeah. One person last week told me, she said, I know you're right. You can usually pick out touchy people and non-touchy people, okay? And you say to them, are you a touchy person? Do you like being touched? Yes. Do you know anybody or situations where you didn't like to be touched?
Can't think of it.
You can't think of it. So it could be a problem long, long ago, or it might not be so long ago. But he's experienced something to do with touch has caused an abnormality in the neurological circuit between his left brain and his right. And we'll see that the left brain is the logical and the right is the intuitive or thinking one. Okay. Now, he should be strong, so we'll just re-challenge him on that. And then something interesting is going to happen. Okay, we go back now to where we started with the eye first. Eye right and eye left. Okay, and then we do it around the other way. Okay, and he's strong. In the ear. Okay, keep with the first finger. You're putting your nasal one in. Okay, now the next one up your nose. That's it. Pull. Oh. So now right to left comes smell. Okay. Now what I should have done before this is to do a test on the muscle or muscles associated with his small intestine. Okay. And this is very impressive because this is why the real cause of why a lot of people have deep-seated mechanical problems is there is a priority muscle. We all talked about priority muscles, but this is the priority muscles. And this is the one where if it's not strong, it creates a weakness throughout the whole general muscular system. Now we know small intestine is related to rectus femoris. We know it's related to the other vasti muscles. So push your foot up to the ceiling. Vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, interarticularis, push up. Okay, let's test the other side. Bend that one, Andrew. Up to the ceiling. Okay, out to the ceiling, up to the ceiling, up to the ceiling. Okay, and it also relates to the abdominals. So come and sit. Okay, bend the knees slightly up and fold the arms in front of you. Push up against me. Go back. That's it for the lower rectus femoris. Whoa. Okay, so if you have him up about, what do you think, 45 degrees there, is it? That's it. And then, so this is the lower rectus abdominis down here that we've got him. Okay? Now, what did we find? Smell, wasn't it? So right nostril to the left nostril. Now, you can begin to build up a picture. One of these will occur at a time. Not two, I've never found two or three, but we've had one person who showed to all five, but one after the other. And a lot of people only show to one, okay? But you can only treat the one that shows up, and then you go through them again, and the next one shows, and the next one. And I'll show you the quick way when we come to doing this, how you can tell whether there's any more to come, using going back to the coloured acetate. Now you can imagine, he's a classic, and you've all got probably people in your family, people that you know who've got learning difficulties. Now with Andrew, his touch was left to right, but his nose is right to left. So when he smells something, it's creating an abnormal circuit in his brain, right to left, but when he's touched, it's left to right. So this means that you imagine vision and hearing, and you trying to concentrate on what I'm saying and seeing at the same time, and it's zooming across from one brain to the other, and there's a block. Okay? No wonder some kids have tremendous problems with learning. Okay? So the implications for this little simple technique are enormous. Not only for your kids and things, but for you. You're slightly dyslexic, yeah. But you'll be much better after this. Okay? You'll see things one side more than the other. Hopefully, you'll be your right brain, so you'll see them all right brain. But there's a little bit of left in there with these sensations. So we'll put that away. Okay, take them off. Okay, now we start again. Not with the same finger though. So we go back to the eye, right eye. So can someone make a note of those? So it's touch left to right and it's nose right to left. Okay, so now do left to right. Now do the ears, right to left, left to right. Okay, now do the tongue, so that's the fourth finger. And around the other way. All right, now he's not weakening. We've done the other two, so we've only got 3 to do. Okay, you with me? Or you will be. Now we go back now to the small intestine colour. And we should find that you don't weaken to it anymore. Okay, come and sit. And bend the knees up a little bit, fold the arms. You're going to be amazed now. Go back, go back, go back. And whoa, and push up. What a difference. If he's got weak abdominals there, he's going to get back problems. Yet he's got no support in the anterior part of the trunk. Some of the most spectacular ones I've come across are people with foot problems, and they're associated with the bladder meridian. Okay, they've got weak tibials or weak peronei, and nothing strengthens them up until you deal with their mind. And when you deal with their mind, the muscle power is absolutely enormous. Okay, now how long will that last? Maybe till later on today, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. We don't know. Okay, maybe he'll need a few sessions. But when the people come back for the second session, they usually only show to one of those sensory inputs and not 2 or 3 or 4, which is good. And sometimes people feel very different. Sometimes they start to sleep for the first time, particularly if it's the bladder, because they're stimulating the production of serotonin, which will go on to melatonin and so on. They're much less troubled in their mind. They don't have so much conflict. So if you think about it, any conflict in your mind is an argument between the logical side and the intuitive side. It's a continuous argument. And that argument can be turned up to volume number 10, 24/7. It's called dreams when you're asleep, if you sleep. Or it can be tuned right down. Okay? But it's running in the background all the time. So where did all that information come from, which is causing the dispute, is you saw it. You heard it and you touched it and so on. And now you begin to realize why you shouldn't show horror movies to children, because they become real in their brains, okay? And it can come out 40 years later. People tell me they have nightmares still about things they did as a child or saw or thought they saw as a child. And it still comes out 40, 50, 60 years later, okay? It's all programmed in there and it's all programmed in you, okay? So the first House of Horror film, Hammer Horrors, that you saw with Vincent Price, cutting the woman with the guillotine, that's in there, and you shouldn't show that to a 6-year-old, okay? Right, so that's you sort of started. So we've got the overall picture. So what we've done with Andrew at this stage is we found mechanically he had a neck problem, okay, as we went through. Biochemically, the only thing he really showed up to was a nutrition, and when we come to it, we'll see that there's a particular 4 fatty acids that he needs, that he'll show up to. And he will show up to specific vitamins, and he will show up to some specific minerals. Okay? We know that his gonads are the important organ in his body, so we've got to look after it. And he's a person, because he's gonadal, he's going to be very sensitive not only to testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, but estrogens. So it's very, very important that we get those steroid hormones rightly balanced. So the nutrients that he's going to show to will be to balance all those hormones. Neurochemically, we know he's going to need more noradrenaline, to give him that get up and go, which is down a little bit there. So that's on the biochemistry. Doesn't appear to be any toxins at this stage. We'll keep an eye on him. He says he doesn't like milk anyway, so it's no big issue. Keep an eye on no mercury. Have you got any mercury in your mouth? He has. He's got mercury in his mouth, so that would be long term. If it's not showing as a problem, he should get those gradually replaced. Okay, that's really, really important there. Watch, tyramine types of foods because of migraines and things. So there's a sort of pattern that's building up here. Check all his toiletries, because all toiletries contain estrogen-like compounds, artificial compounds, which will attack to the same receptors as estrogen, okay? And the number one with blue people is the prostate gland, okay? So the place where the estrogens will attach with the sex hormone binding globulins will be the prostate gland. So he's got to look after that prostate, and that means he needs to take the right nutrients to metabolize. He needs to avoid the wrong toiletries. Cosmetics shouldn't probably come into it. You probably don't wear any of that. But he should have his amalgams looked at, because, that mercury leaking is not a good thing for a blue person. Which oil should you not be taking because it contains mercury? Is fish oil. Okay, do you eat fish or fish oil? No. Fish is not so bad. They say, fish once a week is not a big issue. But fish on a real regular diet and of course fish oil, because that's where the fish puts the mercury, is a no-go for blue people. Fine for green, fine for red, but no-go for blues. Okay, so we built up a nice little package for him, and he came in with no symptoms. Okay, so hopefully he's going out with no symptoms. But you will find that anything, even doing those simple techniques, will have got rid of most problems anyway. But you've got to bind the nutrition and the detox, if necessary, in, because it won't last. Okay, but you can see the value as you go through of doing the emotional part as well as the structure and the biochemistry. But you need all three. You know what people always say: body, mind, and spirit. If you don't deal with all three, you've not done the job properly. Okay. So I haven't done the job properly, have I? Because I've done his body and I've done his mind, but I haven't done his spirit. Okay? So where's his spirit? Where does his spirit live? Ask a psychologist or anybody else where his spirit is, and they'll say, well, it's nowhere. And the answer is, you're right, it isn't anywhere. His spirit doesn't live anywhere because it isn't an entity, it doesn't have a structure. Okay? It's a non-physical thing. All we know is it works through the brain. Okay, the brain is the operating system for the higher self. And the area where it does that is a very specific, very small area called the orbital frontal lobe of the frontal neofrontal cortex. And it's just above the eyebrow. It sits there on the top of the orbit. Okay, and those are the places you can therapy localize it. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to therapy localize on the right side, here, just above the eyebrow, and on the left side. And you say, oh, that was the old emotional stress reflexes. True, but it's a little lower than the old neurovascular points for the pectoralis major. It's above the eyebrow, is much more, and you don't get it by two-handed therapy localization. Bang, pull. You only get it when you do one side. Now do the left to the right. Okay. In his case, right to left didn't do anything, left to right does. Okay. So he's got a conflict in his spirit as well as his mind. So where did his mind come from? Came from his spirit. So top of the whole pile is his consciousness, as David Hawkins and others talk about. His conscious thinking has created his hardwiring within his brain, which is the subconscious or the mind, which then has changed his chemistry and altered him from being a pure blue into a touch of red. So clearly he was missing things which was allowing his thyroid to then become a problem because he was red. We're done with it. Oh, here's the light box. Okay, so we do exactly the same thing. 1 minute on the light box with the mirror on light. Now, as soon as you see the mirror on light, you'll say, ah, that's an interesting colour, because you don't see it in nature. Okay, and I'll describe what it is exactly as we go through. But some people do recognise it. And the people who recognise it immediately are the people who meditate. And people, when they're in a perfect state of meditation, see this colour. And they say, I know that colour, that's what I see. And you don't see it visibly, you see it in your mind. So if you cover your eyes, not now, if you cover your eyes and you start to see this light, that's when you're in a real meditative state. And what is a meditative state? It's a clear state, okay? There's no chatter of your subconscious talking left brain, right brain. You're at peace and harmony between the left brain and the right brain, okay? And so the body functions are all functioning with pure homeostasis. So this is what we want to try and achieve, is a state of harmony. So at the moment he's not disharmony, but there is disharmony in there, and we know that it was something to do related to touch, his concept of touch, his experience of touch, his perception, and of smell. So we can say psychologically, touch is associated with feelings. Okay? There's feelings in there. He's still got some bad feelings in there somewhere, and he's got a bad smell. Now most of these people tell you, yeah, they're very sensitive with their nose. They experience, and unfortunately, like all of us, we experience sometimes good smells, nice smells, and nasty smells. If you smell, as a man, if I smell a perfume on a woman, I can recognize that perfume from somebody I knew 40 years ago. You know, it's hardwired in. Smell is very, very powerful in the memory. Very, very powerful part of the memory. And probably you girls can recognize the smell of Brute and immediately remember the man in the late 1960s that kissed you who was covered and smothered in Brute. Us men used to like that. Did you wear Brute, Bob? Yes, there you are. Bob's a Brute man. Yeah. What? You wouldn't, yeah. But if you've been kissed with a man with brute, you'll never forget the smell, but you'll never forget the man. That's what I mean. So it's a real hard memory in there, okay? So you must always finish off your techniques. If you go into the emotional side, you do the mind part, in other words, the hard wiring of the subconscious, but you must also do the conscious part, okay? If you don't do that, he'll just redo it. Now it's very important this, because I said it doesn't, the spirit doesn't live anywhere, okay, because it's a non-physical. So interestingly, if it's non-spatial, it doesn't have a location. We know it works through this area, and they call this the executive center, because this is where you make your real decisions. 5% of the time we make decisions in life, 95% of the time we work subconsciously without having to think. If there's no space, that means there's no time. Okay, physics teaches us that. Time is related to the length of time light takes to travel from one place to another. So light takes, 7 minutes or something, no, 7 seconds from the sun, doesn't it, to get to us. So we can measure the speed of light and therefore the distance of the sun away, okay? Because that's physical, okay, that's linear. If there is no space, there's no time. That's interesting, isn't it? Which means that the spirit is timeless. Okay? It never did exist before or after, it is now. Okay? And that's what good philosophers will tell you, that it's now. There is only one time, and that is now. And that now is eternal. Okay? It was no beginning and there's no end. Okay? And interestingly, when we come to look at what the light is the the thing. This light allows, this glass allows the extreme violet end of the spectrum, that's all, and the ultraviolet to come through, and the extreme of the red and the early part of the infrared. So what you're doing is you're having the extremes of the rainbow, the opposite poles, coming back together again. Okay? And in spiritual terms, this is called alpha and omega, isn't it? It's when the two poles meet. And when you see that light, it is quite unique. You do not see that light in nature, because we visibly only see the spectrum. So the miracle of Miron is it's actually wangled two polar lights together, and that, as we'll see, helps to protect against oxidation from the effects of the visible light spectrum. So we'll just do that. And what you should find now is you're nice and strong, okay, and you'll be one hell of a lot better. You can sit round his feet later at the coffee break and ask him questions. He can be your guru. Off you go. Thank you. Okay. So he's in a very peaceful state. Will that last? It'll last until somebody presses his button and he reacts. Okay. And suddenly he doesn't see love and reverence with them. Okay. And bang, the circuit will go again. And he may need 4, 5, 6 treatments. He may only need the one. We'll see. But we'll know when he's broken the circuit because his abdominals will give on him. And he'll tell you, I felt really, much better, much stronger. And he said, oh, they've gone. So maybe it'll be lunch or something. Make them go. But it's, we'll see what happens. Okay. So that roughly is what we're going to be covering. We're going to obviously be talking about a whole load of other things as we go along. Later on tomorrow, I'll be talking about putting it together as a prostate. This is really a big problem for men now. Largely created by the medical profession, of course, because they're discovering that most of us men over 50 have got prostate problems, and most are getting into real serious trouble by having therapy for it. And the best thing for most, unless it's an invasive form, is not to have therapy in the first place, to handle it with natural methods. So people will be asking you a lot, what are the natural methods? And I'm going to give you a checklist. Okay, so there'll be things for you to check. 100% you can easily go through these and see what sort of things will help a person with prostate. But the first thing you know is it's the blue boys who are going to get it. Girls are okay on this, but of course girls get breast cancer, which is almost identical causation as the prostate. Okay? So we know it's the blues that we're after, and anybody who's got a touch of blue potentially could get problems. It does not mean that blue people will get cancer, but I have never yet found a cancer case who wasn't blue. Okay, either in one eye or both eyes, but they could become blue. They could be a red who's developed a blue because of their thinking. Okay, in other words, they change their biochemistry because of these subconscious emotions. So it's really interesting. And so we're going to learn a lot about yourselves. By the end of the day or tomorrow, you'll know a lot about yourself and how you're programmed and how you see the world.
End of chapter 1.